Welcome back to the next part of our interview with Sabah al-Nasseri, where we discuss the prospects for Iraq. John McCain says we'll stay as long as we have to assure victory. Barack Obama says we'll draw down most of the troops within 16 months, but depending on conditions on the ground. And maybe the elephant in the room, to use a hackneyed phrase, is when you're talking about the conditions on the ground, is just who are they going to hand power to? The current government, which is this strange balance between American and Iranian and Iraqi elite interests, it seems to be a status quo that the U.S. can live with. Certainly, if you listen to Barack Obama and the American military, they could live with this balance of forces. But there's a wild card in the mix. Muqtada al Sadr. If this was a government led by or heavily influenced by Muqtada al Sadr, perhaps both John McCain and Barack Obama would not be in any hurry to leave. And so that's my question. Where is al Sadr?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, locally, probably he's in Iran, in Qom, one of the religious cities in Iran. But politically, he is all over the place in Iraq. So the thing is, if you reconstruct the last 4 years, you will see a kind of pattern. Every time we have an election, a few months before the election, there's a huge offensive of the US and the Iraqi troops against some resistance figure in Iraq. In 2004, like 2 months before the election, 2005, they attacked the city of Fallujah.
And let's put this into context for our viewers. There's a provincial elections planned for this October. We can get into the issues later, but there's a fight over various issues facing the elections. But it was expected that Sadr could have won perhaps as much as 60% of the vote. And then we have the attack on Basra. So tell us a little bit what state, from what you know, are the forces of Sadr. And let me just quote a piece from Patrick Coburn again, who just returned from Iraq, about what he thinks is the conditions of the Sadrist forces. The Iraqi government is doing its best to liquidate or cripple the Sadrist movement before the provincial elections in October. An American military intelligence assessment this year suggested Sadr's followers would win 60% of the vote in Baghdad and southern Iraq. Coburn says, but they're unlikely to do so now. Coburn goes on to say, essentially, that the Sadr forces, in fact, have been weakened, not only in Basra, but in Sadr city. Sadr is somewhere in Iran. And that the popularity of the Sadrist movement is much less. One, they feel he gave in too easily over Sadr city fight and over Basra. And two, according to Coburn and others, there's a feeling that the Sadr movement was a bit one note and isn't dealing with the complexity of the politics, and that Sadr's star has fallen some. What's your take?
I think he's relatively right. In the military sense, he's right, of course.
Military sense.
Exactly. The attack of the US and the Iraqi troops, by the way, the British Air Force too, they joined them in Basra to attack the movement. It was relatively successful in a military sense, but not in a political sense. Because the thing is, the popularity of al Sadr depends not on his military or Mahdi army, but on his social and charity projects all over the poor provinces in Iraq, from Basra up to Baghdad. So the thing is, if you know, like in a few months ago when they attacked Basra, spontaneously, different people in different provinces in Iraq, from Basra up to Nasiriyah, Umara, Kut, to Baghdad, they rised up against the US and the Iraqi troops. This showed the popularity of al Sadr. Coburn might be right that the movement in general was weakened, but I think what's going on, they are trying to transform the movement into a political party. And I think they are in the process of reconstituting this movement into political parties. And probably part of the deal which al-Maliki achieved in Iran through the mediation of Iran with al Sadr is to give the al Sadr movement the capacity and the possibility to create themselves as a new political party or movement to take part in the election.
To make them part of the parliamentary process and lay down their arms, more or less.
So probably al-Maliki underestimating his success, the popularity of al Sadr, and he thinks now they are so weak that he could, with al-Hakim, win the election in October. But this is just a hypothesis.
There's an interesting regulation they've passed or want to pass as part of these elections, which is they're going to prohibit the use of photographs of anyone who's not a candidate, because they assume Sadr won't actually run himself. They're going to stop his political supporters from using his photograph.
And they did this a few weeks ago when they were saying each political movement or party would have a kind of militias. They are not allowed to take part in the election. So they are trying to attack al Sadr on all levels, ideologically, militarily, politically, etc. And they think that they are weakening the movement and they can secure the election in October. But I think they are underestimating the popularities and the potential of the movement in October. And you're right. The United States would rather have this constellation of forces within the Iraqi parliament, within the executive, than somebody like al Sadr, or probably different groups, because this is the best constellation they can wish for the time being. For the time being, because they actually dropped down all the demands they used to have before, like for security agreement, etc. They realize they cannot do that. So they are trying to make like small compromises with this government. And this is the best constellation they can wish to make kind of agreement with them. They will not have any success with al Sadr or different political forces if they win the election.
In the next segment of our interview, let's discuss just how big a strategic defeat is this for the United States?
Yeah.
Can they accept an Iraq that has more sovereignty perhaps than they ever expected? And is there anything they can do about it?
Yeah.
So please join us for the next part of our interview with Sabah al-Nasseri.